Hi there, welcome to another little episode of MacGyver's Workshop, and today we're going to be changing the water pump on a 2003 BMW 325i. This is a car you've seen come through here many times, and we just put the diesel valve on it, and now we're going to go ahead while it's here and do the water pump, because it's weeping a little bit out of the little hole, and do an oil change and filter and things like that while it's here. So, okay, first step, basically, you want the car relatively cool. Obviously, overnight cold's good, but if you have to run it a minute to bring it in the shop like we did, that's not going to hurt anything. The first thing we want to do is we've got to get the stuff out of the way so we can get the fan out. So in order to do that, we'll get this air box out of our way here, and we'll try and get the shroud out. And to do that, we'll just have to pull up these little plastic retainers. You want to be real careful with them. You don't want to break them. And usually you can only find them via mail order, and they will rattle and make a bunch of racket if you don't put them back in. So let's get this out and go from there. Okay, so next step is you want to get your fan loose on here. You'll notice that I have that big nut loose there, and there's various tools out there for doing that. Then once you have that loose, then you also want to undo the fan shroud, and you have another one of those little plastic pop clips here, and then this one has a little Torx screw here, and you want to be gentle with it because that screws into the radiator, and then the whole shroud and fan will come out together once you get it unscrewed. Now there's also two electrical connectors, or an electrical connector that sits in here, and then this little sensor thing that hooks up here. Get those out of the way, and then we'll take the shroud and the fan out together. That'll give us lots of room to work in there. And out they come. Now, always keep your fan vertical. Don't lay it flat. I always say to do that. And then while you have it out, go ahead and check and make sure you got plenty of resistance on the fan clutch here, to make sure that fan clutch is working good. You don't want it overheating in the middle of the summer. Okay. Now the next step is to get those 4 10mm bolts loose on the drive pulley for the water pump right there, and you want to do that with the belt still on it, obviously, otherwise the pulley will just try and turn on you. So we'll get those broken loose, then we'll take the serpentine belt off, get it out of the way, and then we can start removing the pulley and the water pump. Okay, so now we've got the air box all out of the way, so we can see all around our expansion tank and make sure we don't have any catastrophic leakage or splitting or anything going on there. Now it's time to remove the serpentine belt that we have all our 4 bolts loose on the water pump pulley. Now if you're froggy enough to get in here and do your own water pump on a Beamer, you probably know this already, but I'll cover it anyway just in case you're, well, stupid. But at first glance, to the novice who's worked on their Chevys and Fords all their lives, they may think that this bolt here is for the belt tensioner, but in this case it is not. And in fact, it is hiding over here, and you want to rotate that clockwise to release the belt tension, and that's a 16mm. And if you don't have a complete 16mm or a complete metric socket set, a lot of them don't come with 16mm, don't fret. 5/8 is the same thing basically. It'll get you by until you can get the right socket later on. So anyway, just so you know that, and moving right along. So now we have our ratchet and our socket in here, and we just pull up on that, and that will release the belt tension so we can get our belts loose. It's easiest just to take it off the alternator right here and then let her go back down, and that'll do you there for that. Okay, so now we'll get our bolts off of here that we loosened up before. And once we get to where we can access everything, then we'll go ahead and drain our coolant. And in theory, this should pop off relatively easily. Now, this is a composite pulley. It's meaning it's plastic. So check for any fractures or cracks anywhere. You don't want that thing coming apart on you or on your customer going down the road. So they're typically pretty robust, but they have been known to fail on some occasions. So okay, so to drain the coolant, we will lift the car up, and right there you have to pull the little aerodynamic wind pan off of there, and there's a little blue screw up in there that seals that up. Now what I always take this opportunity to do is to grab a sample of the coolant. So there's my little blue plug. There's my coolant. This car runs Dex Cool, which is the orange stuff, not the green. And so you can check for any, major spooge or oil or rust or anything like that. So we're going to let that drain for a while, and then okay, so now we've checked and made sure that our expansion tank's in good shape, and all that's good. Now it's time to remove the water pump, and you'll have 10mm nuts. There's one here, 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 and here. Now this pump sits pretty deep inside the housing with an O-ring, and it's liable to fight you the whole way out. So they provide you some threaded holes here and here, so you can use a metric bolts to drive the act as like a kind of a little puller, if you will, to help you get the pump out. So let's get these bolts or nuts off of here, and let's see how we can get this pump out of here. Okay, now I was lucky, so this one's going to jiggle out. Okay, catch pan under there. And there you go. So much for that. Okay, let me make sure our hole is nice and clean. Everything's kosher and spiffy there. Unfortunately, it's a tapered hole, so that O-ring should pop in there okay, but I still put just the ever so slightest, tiniest bit of Vaseline on there to make it slide in there nice and gentle. So let's get our pump going in here. And there's your skidunk. You shouldn't have to draw the pump in with the bolts or nuts. You should be able to get it seated all the way if you're fortunate enough there. Just gently wiggle it in there, and that little tiny bit of Vaseline on there, it'll slide right in. Don't overdo it. But, get our water pump nuts back on there. And snug them up. We'll be good to go. Again, you want to draw everything up nice and even. Doesn't require a ton of torque. Snug them up nice. That's it. Your water pump's in. Bolt our pulley back on. And again, remember, this is a composite pulley, so you want to make sure you draw it up nice and even. I like to thread mine on by hand all the way first, and then snug them up with a ratchet. Then you can do your final torque check once you have the belt on, but truth be told, this is really sufficient as far as tightening torque goes. Alright. Get our belt back on. Okay, now with the belt back on, if you feel the need, you can double check the snuggie on these pulleys, this pulley here. Again, you don't want to torque them too much, because they don't really need a lot of torque. Alright, and we'll get our upper radiator hose back on here. Just want to be very gentle about how you do it. Now, before I put the shroud back in, I usually take this opportunity to go ahead and fill the reservoir up. And I leave the bleeder screw out so any air can escape. Very important that you bleed the coolant system on these cars, otherwise they won't have any heat, and of course you don't want to risk blowing a head gasket because you got an air pocket in the head somewhere. Now I'm using the pre-diluted stuff, so you don't have to worry about, you know, did I put half and half in or not. Okay, so we'll do a little special segment here of MacGyver's Workshop, and we'll kind of call it Newbie 101. And using this 2003 BMW 325i as an example, you know, we'll just say, we'll pose the question, is how exactly do you change the oil in a BMW? So we'll go through that. It's a very easy, brief process here, and we'll start by how to properly drain the old oil out of the crankcase. So Let's get a look. Now, we have the luxury of being able to put the car up on a lift here. If not, then you will need to jack the car up. I would recommend doing it from the driver's side because the drain plug is on the passenger side of the oil pan. So while you have it jacked up, it will tilt the car to the side of where the drain is, so all your oil drains out. It is advisable to go ahead and I know there's differing schools of thought on this, but it's advisable to have the engine warm, not baking hot after a day at the track, but the engine warm so the oil's thinned out and it runs out and drains out real good. So, well, to get the drain plug out, you'll need a 17mm socket and a ratchet, of course. And always remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Now, I've got this here like so. And the plug is countersunk into the drain pan on this particular BMW anyway. Now you're going to keep your hands on it. And what you want to do is you want to keep pressure on the plug as you're unscrewing it, even when you get it all the way out. That's A, so you minimize how much oil you get on your hands. And B, that way you can grab a hold of it and pull. Look at that, no oil on my hands. Then get your rag. The little red shop towels that you get from the auto parts store or Wally World are excellent to have because you can rinse them out in a bucket full of Tide and reuse them, or you can just dispose of them depending on how far you want to go with it. And this is very important if you own a BMW. I don't go to the auto parts store and get auto parts store filters for either BMWs or Ford Power Strokes because these are the one things that I will go with a genuine manufacturer filter because these cartridge type filters, aftermarkets, I've seen them collapse and seen the glue break down on them and they come apart, and you know, it's just not worth the risk. So, and MANN, M-A-N-N, is a OEM supplier to BMW, and of course you'll see BMW on there. And the cool thing about it is that they, and most of your aftermarkets will not, also are kind enough to give you a new copper O-ring for your oil pan drain plug here. So that's always a good thing. And they also give you the O-ring that goes in the housing up top here. We'll get to that in a minute. Hey, after all your oil's drained out and you put your oil plug in with your new copper washer, I always run it up by hand first, and using your 17mm socket, you'll feel it compress that copper washer. You don't need to tighten the dog daylights out of it, but of course you do want it tight enough to where it doesn't leak. That copper washer is designed to crush and provide a tight seal without it having to be so tight that you break the oil pan getting the drain plug out. Now we'll move on to the top where we're going to change the filter. Okay, the oil filter on a BMW, at least in the 325 series, is located right here under this plastic cover. Now to do that, to get that off, don't go grabbing for the vice grips or the pipe wrench, because this is plastic. So it's a 36 millimeter socket is the best way to go about it, and I believe that you can probably buy a wrench that'll fit this around the outside, but 36 millimeter works good on the center there. And we'll just undo it. Now you're going to get a little seepage there, so I'll get a rag handy. And it probably doesn't hurt to get your garbage can handy too. Once you get past the O-ring, then you can undo everything by hand here. Very gently pull it up, because the filter is going to come out with the lid. So what I will do, I will take my rag here. I'll pull this filter cartridge out and just kind of let it drain a little bit, and then very quickly get over to my rag, and then on over to the trash can, where you just pop that cartridge off and dispose of it accordingly. And you just slide your new filter on here. Like thusly. Let's double check these two little O-rings right here, make sure they're not damaged. They don't necessarily have to be replaced with the filter. But what you do want to do is you want to go ahead and change this big giant rubber O-ring out on the lid here, just to ensure no leaks. And since your good quality oil filter came with a new one, it only makes sense to use it. Now all you got to do is take a little bit of the residual oil that's on the threads of the lid there, and just get a little bit of it on that O-ring. Wipe off any excess. And drop your filter back down in there. And it starts threading in. Make sure we wipe off any dribbles. You don't want to have a messy looking job. Then you just screw the cap back down. And the torque spec for that is 25 Newton meters. Okay. Now in English, really, I'm not sure what that translates to, but again, just remember that this lid is plastic, and it doesn't need to be over tightened. So, and there you go. You top your oil off, and BMWs use a synthetic oil, so you want to make sure you use a good grade of synthetic, either Mobil 1 or BMW here mentions Castrol. And put your oil back in. Your individual BMWs will vary depending on how much their capacity is, but check with your owner's manual for that, and then top it off and crank it up. Don't give it any gas, let it idle, and then reset your service interval, and I'll go into that here in a minute. Okay, so now we're bleeding the coolant system out. What you want to do is when you fill the coolant system up initially, you want to have this all the way out. And of course, I've run past it now and I've got it running. But take this bleeder screw all the way out and fill your coolant system up through the expansion tank until you start seeing coolant come out of the hole here. And once you have that to where there's no more air coming out, then you put the bleeder screw back in, fill this up the rest of the way, and then we'll start the car up. Now I'm going ahead and running mine without the fan or the shroud for the moment. Speeds things up. But and then before you start the car, or when you start the car, turn your heat up to maximum. Like this car goes up to 91 degrees on the climate control. And turn the fan on just 1 or 2 ticks up off the low. And then you just let it idle until it comes up to temperature. And then watch your little float thingy here. If it does have an air pocket in it and it burps, and you'll see this drop way down as the expansion tank empties out to fill that void. So other than that, that's about it. And of course, you always want to keep an eye on your temperature gauge while you're running it to bring it up to temp. Because if it has a big air pocket in it and you didn't fill it properly, then if you see the temperature start climbing up past 12 o'clock on the gauge, then you can just shut it down and let it cool off and start over again. That's how we like to see them. Parked out there waiting to be picked up. So, I'm sure she'll be happy about that. I'll let her know. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.